They laughed when he carried the girl into the blizzard, calling him a fool for risking his life for a stranger's child. But when he brought her to safety and opened the floorboards of his grandfather's abandoned homestead, what he revealed wasn't just medicine. It was a 50-year secret that would expose the biggest medical cover-up in modern history, transform a dying town into a beacon of hope, and prove that sometimes the most powerful healing comes from the places we're taught to fear. Before you explore, we dive into the story. Make sure to smash subscribe because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The wind didn't just howl through Pine Ridge that February night, it screamed. It tore through the valley like something alive, something furious, ripping shingles from roofs and snapping power lines like guitar strings. The kind of storm that made old-timers shake their heads and mutter about the winter of '73, when the Johnsons lost half their cattle and the town went dark for 11 days straight. Sarah Mitchell stood at the window of Pine Ridge Elementary, her breath fogging the glass as she peered into the white chaos outside. Snow fell so thick she couldn't see past the flagpole in the parking lot. The afternoon sky had turned the color of old bruises purple and gray, pressing down on the mountain town like a warning. "Mrs. Mitchell?" A small voice pulled her attention away from the storm. She turned to see Jeremy Paulson, 7 years old, gap-toothed and worried. "My mum's not here yet." Sarah glanced at the clock. 3:45. School had let out at 3, but the storm had rolled in faster than anyone predicted. Most parents had already picked up their kids, tires spinning in the fresh powder, exhaust clouds hanging in the frozen air. But 6 children remained, huddled in the cafeteria with their backpacks and winter coats, waiting, including Emma. Sarah's daughter sat at one of the lunch tables, her small frame hunched over a coloring book. At 8 years old, Emma was petite for her age, with her mother's dark hair and her late father's gentle brown eyes. But what worried Sarah most wasn't visible to the casual observer. It was the slight pallor in Emma's cheeks, the way she tired more easily than other children, the bruises that appeared without explanation. The rare blood disorder the doctors in Denver had diagnosed 18 months ago, the one that required medication Sarah could barely afford even with her teacher's salary and the life insurance from David's death. "Your mum will be here soon, Jeremy," Sarah said, forcing brightness into her voice. "The roads are just slow right now." She pulled her cell phone from her pocket. No service. The storm must have taken out the tower on Marker's Peak. The landline in the principal's office was dead too. They were cut off, at least temporarily. Sarah walked back to the cafeteria, her boots squeaking against the waxed linoleum. The building felt too big, with just the 7 of them inside. Every sound echoed. The furnace kicked on with a groan, and somewhere down the hall, a loose window rattled in its frame. "Okay, everyone," Sarah said, clapping her hands together. "Looks like we're having an adventure. Who wants to help me make hot chocolate?" The children perked up. Even Emma, who set down her crayons and slid off the bench. They moved to the small kitchen adjacent to the cafeteria, and Sarah busied herself with packets of instant cocoa and the industrial-sized coffee maker. As she worked, she watched Emma from the corner of her eye. Her daughter moved slowly, deliberately, like every motion required calculation. It broke Sarah's heart in ways she couldn't articulate. 2 years. It had been 2 years since David's truck slid off the mountain road during a spring thaw. 2 years since the sheriff knocked on her door with his hat in his hands and that terrible look in his eyes. 2 years of being both mother and father, teacher and nurse, of stretching every dollar until it screamed, of lying awake at night doing math that never quite added up. The medical bills alone were crushing. Emma's medication cost $800 a month, even with insurance. The specialist appointments in Denver meant missing work, burning through sick days, driving 3 hours each way in a 15-year-old Honda that needed new tires and made a noise Sarah was afraid to identify. She'd sold David's tools, his fishing gear, everything she could part with. She'd stopped buying herself new clothes, started cutting her own hair, learned to make a rotisserie chicken last 5 meals. And still, it wasn't enough. "Mrs. Mitchell, the hot chocolate's bubbling over." Sarah jerked back to reality. She'd been staring at the coffee maker, lost in her thoughts while chocolate-flavored foam spilled across the counter. Oh, goodness. Okay, grab some paper towels, everyone. They cleaned up the mess together, the children giggling as Sarah made exaggerated faces of dismay. She poured the hot chocolate into paper cups, and they settled at one of the tables. Outside, the storm intensified. The wind slammed against the building so hard the windows rattled in their frames. "I'm scared," whispered Chloe Martinez, 6 years old, her eyes wide. "Don't be," Sarah said gently. "This building has stood through 100 storms. We're safe here. And I bet your parents are on their way right now. They're probably just driving really, really carefully." But as the minutes stretched into an hour, Sarah's own worry deepened. The snow was piling up fast. Already it had to be 6 or 7 inches, and according to the forecast she'd seen that morning before the internet went out, they were expecting another foot by midnight. The temperature was dropping too. She could feel it in the way the old building creaked and settled, in the frost creeping across the inside of the windows. At 4:30, headlights finally pierced the white curtain outside. Sarah felt a wave of relief as Jeremy's mother appeared, bundled in a parka, apologizing profusely as she gathered her son. Then came Chloe's father, then the Brennan twins' grandmother in her ancient Suburban, chains clanking on the tires. By 5:15, only Emma remained. "It's okay, Mama," Emma said quietly. She'd moved back to her coloring, her small hand gripping a purple crayon. "We can wait." Sarah tried her cell phone again. Still nothing. She walked to the front entrance and pushed the door open against the wind. Snow immediately blew into her face, stinging and cold. The parking lot was a smooth, white expanse, completely unmarked. Her Honda sat beneath at least 8 inches of snow, looking small and inadequate against the storm's fury. No one was coming. Not tonight. The roads were impassable now. They'd have to wait it out here until morning, until the plows could get through. Sarah had done this before, once, 5 years ago during a surprise November blizzard. She'd slept on the couch in the teacher's lounge, while David had been safe at home, probably watching football and eating the leftover chili she'd made. But David wasn't home anymore. David was in the cemetery on the hill, under 6 feet of earth and a granite stone that had cost more than Sarah wanted to think about. "All right, baby girl," Sarah said, closing the door and turning back to Emma. "Looks like we're camping here tonight. Should we build a fort?" Emma's face lit up, and for a moment she looked like any other 8-year-old, excited about an unexpected adventure. They gathered couch cushions from the teacher's lounge, blankets from the nurse's office, and constructed an elaborate fort in the corner of the cafeteria. Sarah found graham crackers and apple juice boxes in the kitchen. They'd be fine. Uncomfortable, but fine. At 6 o'clock, as Sarah was reading Emma a story by flashlight because the overhead fluorescence hurt her daughter's eyes, she heard something that made her stop mid-sentence. A sound that didn't belong to the storm, a rhythmic thumping, deliberate. Someone was knocking on the front door. Sarah's first feeling was relief. Someone had made it through. The sheriff maybe, or one of the other teachers who lived in town, checking to make sure everyone got out safely. She hurried to the entrance, Emma trailing behind her, and pulled open the heavy door. The man standing on the other side was not the sheriff. He was tall, well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered beneath a heavy canvas coat crusted with ice and snow. A thick beard covered the lower half of his face, dark with threads of grey, and his hair hung past his collar, wet and tangled. His eyes were pale blue, startling against his weathered skin. He looked like someone who'd walked out of the mountains, out of another century entirely. In his arms, he carried nothing. No, wait, Sarah's eyes adjusted. He was carrying someone, a small someone, wrapped in what looked like his own coat, face pale against the dark fabric. "She collapsed," the man said. His voice was rough, like gravel scraped across metal. "Found her in the snow about a quarter mile up the road, near the school sign. I think it's your daughter." Sarah's heart stopped. Her eyes dropped to the small face visible in the stranger's arms. Emma's face. But Emma was right behind her. Sarah spun around. The spot where Emma had been standing was empty. The fort was empty, A trail of small footprints led to the front door, barely visible in the dim light.
Emma!
Sarah lunged forward, reaching for her daughter.
Oh my God, Emma, what were you doing outside?
I saw a cat, Emma mumbled, her words slurred. Wanted to help it. The stranger stepped inside, shouldering the door closed behind him. Snow fell from his coat in clumps. She needs to get warm. Now. She's hypothermic, and something else is wrong. Her pulse is weak, erratic. Sarah's hands shook as she touched Emma's face. Her daughter's skin was ice cold, lips tinged with blue. The nurse's office, this way. She ran, the stranger following with long strides. The nurse's office was small but had a cot, blankets, a space heater. Sarah plugged in the heater while the stranger laid Emma on the cot with surprising gentleness. He began unwrapping her from his coat, his movements quick but controlled. "Get those wet clothes off her," he ordered. "Do you have dry blankets?"
Yes, Who are you?
Sarah suddenly realized she was taking orders from a complete stranger, a man who'd appeared out of a blizzard carrying her unconscious child. Marcus. He didn't look at her, focused entirely on Emma. "I'm staying up at the old Hendricks homestead. Was heading down the mountain when the storm hit. Found her about 20 minutes ago." Sarah grabbed blankets from the cabinet, her mind racing. The Hendricks place. That property had been abandoned for years, ever since old Thomas Hendricks died back in 2006. It was 4 miles up a Forest Service road that barely existed anymore. Who would be staying there, and why? But those questions could wait. Sarah helped peel off Emma's wet coat, her snow-soaked jeans, her boots and socks. The stranger, Marcus, turned away, giving them privacy, staring at the wall while Sarah wrapped Emma in dry blankets and positioned her near the heater. "She has a condition," Sarah heard herself saying. "A blood disorder, immune thrombocytopenia. She bruises easily, gets sick easier than other kids. The cold, the stress, it could—" "ITP," Marcus said, turning back around. His eyes met Sarah's. "I know it. My daughter had it." Sarah blinked. "Your daughter?" "Had." His jaw tightened. Past tense, different story, different time. He knelt beside the cot, placed 2 fingers against Emma's neck, checking her pulse. His hands were scarred, calloused, but steady, professional. Her heart rate's stabilizing. Body temp is still too low, but she'll come around. We need to keep her warm, keep her awake when she wakes up. Small sips of warm liquid if she can manage. "Are you a doctor?" "Medic, army, long time ago." He stood, ran a hand through his wet hair. "You got coffee or tea? Something hot?" Sarah nodded, still processing. "In the cafeteria. I'll get it." "I'll get it. You stay with her." Before Sarah could protest, Marcus was gone, his boots echoing down the hallway. She sank into the chair beside the cot and took Emma's small hand in hers. It was still so cold. Sarah rubbed it gently, trying to transfer warmth, trying to will life and color back into her daughter's fingers. "Please be okay," she whispered. "Please, baby. I can't lose you too." Emma stirred, her eyelids fluttering. "Mama?" "I'm here. I'm right here. Don't try to move, okay? Just rest." "Cold. I know, sweetheart. But you're warming up. You're going to be fine." Marcus returned carrying 2 steaming cups. He handed one to Sarah, black coffee, and kept the other, something that smelled like the chamomile tea from the faculty lounge. He helped Emma sit up just enough to take tiny sips, coaching her through it with a patience that surprised Sarah. "That's good," he said. "Just a little bit at a time. You're doing great." Emma's eyes, glassy and unfocused, found his face. "You're the mountain man." Marcus's expression softened. "That's right. And you're the girl who wanted to save a cat. Did you see it? The cat?" "No cat out there tonight," Marcus said gently. "Just snow and wind. But that was brave of you, wanting to help." Emma smiled weakly, then her eyes drifted closed again. Marcus checked her pulse once more, then nodded to Sarah. "She's stabilizing. Let her sleep, but wake her every 20 minutes or so. Make sure she's responsive." Sarah watched him, this stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere, who'd saved her daughter's life, who seemed to know exactly what to do. "Thank you. I don't know how to thank you properly, but thank you." Marcus shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. Not anyone. Not in a storm like this. You could have kept walking, found shelter for yourself. Couldn't leave a kid in the snow. He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world, the only option. Besides, I grew up in worse storms than this. Montana winters make Colorado look soft. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds Emma's breathing and the heater's electric hum. Sarah studied Marcus more closely now. He had to be in his early 40s, maybe a few years older than her own 33. The lines around his eyes spoke of years spent squinting into sun and wind. There was a scar on his left hand, another partially hidden by his beard. He wore no wedding ring, no jewelry at all. "The Hendricks place," Sarah said. "How long have you been staying there?" "Month or so. Inherited it from my grandfather. Never knew him. Didn't even know he owned property out here until the lawyers tracked me down." "Thomas Hendricks was your grandfather?" Marcus nodded. "My mother's father. They were estranged. She left Pine Ridge when she was 18, never looked back, never told me much about where she came from." Sarah remembered Thomas Hendricks vaguely. He'd been ancient even when she was a child, a reclusive figure who rarely came into town. There'd been rumors about him, whispers that he'd been a doctor once, that he'd lost his license, that he performed backwoods medicine on people who couldn't afford real hospitals. But those were just stories, the kind of folklore that accumulated around anyone who chose isolation. "So you're staying up there alone, in the middle of winter?" "Seemed as good a time as any to figure out what to do with the place. Needed some space anyway." His tone made it clear he wasn't interested in elaborating. Sarah let it drop. "Well, you're welcome to wait out the storm here. The cafeteria has couches, there's food in the kitchen. It's not much, but it's warm." "Appreciate it." Marcus stood, stretched. His coat was still dripping onto the linoleum. "I'll get this hung up somewhere. You need anything else?" "No, I think we're okay for now. Really, thank you, for Emma." He gave a single nod and left. Sarah listened to his footsteps fade down the hallway, then returned her attention to her daughter. Emma's breathing had evened out, her color slowly returning. The bluish tint was fading from her lips. Sarah touched her forehead, still cool but warmer than before. 20 minutes later, Sarah gently woke Emma, asked her a few simple questions to check her alertness, then let her drift back to sleep. She repeated this every 20 minutes, watching the clock, watching her daughter, listening to the storm rage outside. Sometime around 8 o'clock, Marcus appeared in the doorway with a sandwich on a paper plate. "You should eat," he said. "Found some stuff in the kitchen. It's just peanut butter and jelly, but it's food." Sarah realized she hadn't eaten since lunch, nearly 7 hours ago. She took the plate gratefully. "Did you eat?" "Yeah, made a couple." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "She's looking better." "She is, thanks to you." Sarah took a bite of the sandwich. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "You said your daughter had ITP. Is she okay now?" Marcus's expression went carefully blank. "She died 5 years ago, car accident. She was 6. Her mother too." The sandwich turned to ash in Sarah's mouth. "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have—" "You didn't know." His voice was flat, factual. "It's why I know about ITP. Lily, my daughter, she was diagnosed when she was 4. We learned everything about it. How to watch for symptoms, what foods helped, what to avoid. Became experts because we had to." Sarah set down the sandwich. "My husband died 2 years ago. Truck accident on Route 27. Marcus met her eyes. Something passed between them, a recognition. The fellowship of those who'd lost everything and somehow kept breathing anyway. "Hard thing," Marcus said quietly. "Raising a kid alone, especially one with medical issues." "The hardest thing I've ever done. And I taught middle school for 3 years before transferring to elementary, so that's saying something." A ghost of a smile touched Marcus's face. "I can imagine." They talked for a while, carefully at first, then with more ease. Sarah learned that Marcus had been in the army for 12 years, serving as a combat medic in Iraq and Afghanistan. He'd left the service after his family died, unable to focus, unable to care about anything. He'd drifted for a while, taking odd jobs, moving from town to town. When the letter came from the lawyers about the inheritance, he'd decided to check it out, maybe find some kind of anchor. Sarah told him about David, about the life insurance that had seemed substantial until the medical bills started coming, about the job that she loved but that didn't pay enough, about the constant fear that Emma would get sicker, that the medication would stop working, that she'd wake up one morning and her daughter would be gone. What happens if next we'll turn this night upside down, reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power? Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Somewhere around 9 o'clock, the power went out. One moment the lights were humming overhead, the next they were plunged into darkness. Sarah heard Marcus move, then a flashlight clicked on. "Stay put," he said. "I'll find the circuit breaker." But the power didn't come back. The main line had to be down, buried under snow or snapped by wind. They had flashlights at least, and the space heater ran on a backup battery. Emma slept on, undisturbed by the darkness. Marcus disappeared for a while and returned with an armful of blankets and pillows. "Might as well get comfortable," he said. "We're not going anywhere tonight." Sarah made up a spot on the floor next to Emma's cot while Marcus took the far corner, giving them space. But sleep didn't come easily for Sarah. She kept waking, checking Emma, listening to the storm. And each time she woke, she saw Marcus was awake too, sitting upright, watchful. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked around midnight. "Not much, not since—" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. "I understand. The first year after David died, I think I averaged 3 hours a night, kept waiting for him to come home, kept thinking I heard his truck in the driveway." "Does it get easier?" Sarah considered. "Different, not easier, just different. You learn to carry it." They were quiet for a while. Then Marcus said, "Your daughter, the medication she's on, is it working?" "Mostly. She has good days and bad days. We're supposed to see a specialist in Denver next month, but I don't know if I can afford it. The insurance company keeps finding reasons to deny coverage. The system's broken. Tell me about it." Sarah lay back down, pulling a blanket up to her chin. "Sometimes I think about moving, going somewhere cheaper, somewhere with better medical facilities. But Pine Ridge is home. It's where Emma knows, where David's buried. I can't just leave." "Home matters," Marcus agreed, "even when it's hard." Sarah woke Emma for another check at 12:30, then again at 1. By 2 in the morning, Emma was alert enough to complain about being woken up, which Sarah took as a good sign. The storm showed no signs of letting up. If anything, it had intensified. The wind screamed like something dying. At 3, Sarah finally dozed off for real, exhausted beyond the ability to fight it. When she woke, grey dawn light was filtering through the windows, and Marcus was gone. Panic flared until she saw the note on the floor beside her, written on the back of a cafeteria receipt in blocky handwriting. "Went to check the roads. Back soon. M." Sarah checked Emma, who was sleeping peacefully, her color good, her breathing steady. Then she stood and stretched, her back aching from the hard floor. She walked to the front entrance and looked out through the window in the door. The world had transformed overnight. Snow covered everything, smooth and pristine, at least 2 feet deep. Her Honda was a rounded white lump. The street beyond was invisible, just a seamless expanse of white. And trudging through it, thigh deep, was Marcus. He was making his way back to the school, his breath visible in clouds, his coat powdered with fresh snow. Sarah opened the door as he reached the steps. "Roads?" "Completely buried. Plows won't get through until this afternoon at the earliest, maybe tomorrow." He stomped snow off his boots. "But I saw smoke from the Brennan house and the gas station. Power's still out everywhere, but people are okay." "Did you walk all the way down to Main Street?" "Just to the ridge. Could see most of the town from there." He pulled off his gloves, blew on his hands. "How's Emma?" "Good. Really good, actually. I think she's past the danger." Relief flickered across Marcus's face. "That's good. That's real good." They made breakfast from whatever Sarah could scavenge. Instant oatmeal, apple juice, granola bars. Emma woke up hungry, which was the best sign yet. She was weak, needed help walking to the bathroom, but she was herself again, chatty, curious, asking Marcus 100 questions about where he lived and whether he had a dog and if he'd ever seen a bear. Marcus answered patiently, his gruff exterior softening around Emma in a way that made Sarah's heart ache. She could see the father he'd been, could imagine him with his daughter, braiding her hair or reading bedtime stories. The grief he carried was visible in every gentle gesture. By mid-morning they heard the distant rumble of a plough, then voices. The sheriff appeared first, followed by a couple of volunteer firefighters checking on the school. There was relief all around when they found Sarah and Emma safe, but Sarah noticed the way some of them looked at Marcus. Suspicious, wary. "Who's this?" Sheriff Daniels asked, his hand resting casually on his belt near his weapon.
Marcus. He saved my daughter's life last night,
Sarah said firmly.
Found her in the snow when she wandered outside.
The sheriff's eyes narrowed. Wandered outside during a blizzard? She saw a cat. She's 8, Sheriff. She didn't think it through. And you just happened to be nearby. This was directed at Marcus. I was heading down from the Hendricks place when the storm hit. Found her near the road. Marcus's tone was even, unbothered by the scrutiny. The Hendricks place. You squatting up there? Inherited it. I can show you the deed if you need to see it. The sheriff looked like he wanted to push further, but Sarah stepped between them. He saved Emma's life, Sheriff. That's all that matters to me. The tension hung in the air for a moment. Then Daniels backed off. Fair enough. Roads are clearing. You should be able to get home in an hour or two. We'll give you a ride if you need one. I'd appreciate that, Sarah said. They gathered their things, Sarah helping Emma into her coat and boots. Marcus stood apart, arms crossed, watching the sheriff and firefighters with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. When it was time to go, Sarah approached him. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You saved her. I can't ever repay that. Don't need repayment. Just glad she's okay. Marcus looked down at Emma, who'd wrapped herself around Sarah's leg. You take care of yourself, kid. No more chasing cats in blizzards. Okay, Emma said solemnly. Will you come visit us? Marcus glanced at Sarah, uncertain. Sarah found herself nodding. You're welcome anytime, I mean it. We owe you everything. Maybe I will, Marcus said. Maybe I will. They left him standing in the parking lot, a solitary figure against the white landscape. As the sheriff's SUV pulled away, Sarah looked back. Marcus was already walking, heading back up the mountain toward the Hendricks place, toward whatever solitude he'd sought in that abandoned homestead. Emma fell asleep against Sarah's shoulder during the short drive home. Their little rental house was cold, the power still out, but it was home. Sarah carried Emma inside and tucked her into bed, piling on extra blankets. Then she sat at the kitchen table and let herself shake. She'd come so close to losing Emma. If Marcus hadn't found her, if he'd been 5 minutes later, if the cold had been just a little bit worse, Sarah couldn't finish the thought. She put her head in her hands and cried, all the fear and relief and exhaustion pouring out in racking sobs she'd held back for 18 hours. When she finally stopped, when she'd washed her face and made herself a cup of tea on the camp stove she kept for emergencies, she thought about Marcus, about the way he'd moved with such certainty, such competence, about the grief in his eyes when he mentioned his daughter, about the gentleness in his scarred hands. The town would talk, she knew. They were probably already talking. Single mother, strange man, snowed in together overnight. People would make assumptions, spread rumors. Pine Ridge thrived on gossip the way other towns thrived on industry. But Sarah didn't care. Marcus had saved Emma's life. Nothing else mattered. 2 days later, when the power was restored and life had mostly returned to normal, Sarah drove up to the Hendricks place. The road was barely passable even with four-wheel drive, narrow and rutted, branches hanging low overhead. The homestead sat in a clearing, an old 2-story structure with a sagging porch and boards over some of the windows. Smoke curled from the chimney. Sarah knocked. Marcus opened the door, surprise clear on his face. "Sarah, is everything okay? Is Emma—" "Emma's fine. Great, actually. Back to school yesterday, driving her teacher crazy." Sarah held up a covered dish. "I brought you dinner. Pot roast. It's not much, but I wanted to thank you properly." Marcus took the dish, still looking uncertain. "You didn't have to do this."
I wanted to. Can I come in?"
He hesitated, then stepped aside. The interior of the homestead was sparse but clean. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. Camping gear was piled in one corner, and there were books stacked on a makeshift shelf. But what caught Sarah's attention was the wall of photographs and documents spread across a large table near the window. Medical journals, old letters, diagrams. "What is all this?" Sarah asked. Marcus set down the pot roast. "My grandfather's things. I've been going through them, trying to understand who he was. Turns out he was a doctor, a real one, before he moved out here. Did research on blood disorders, autoimmune conditions, published papers in medical journals in the 60s and 70s. Sarah moved closer, studying the yellowed pages. Blood disorders like ITP. Among others, he developed some experimental treatments, stuff that wasn't approved by the FDA but seemed to work in his private practice." Marcus picked up one of the journals, flipped it open. "After his wife died, he quit mainstream medicine, came out here, kept researching on his own. The town thought he was crazy, but he was just ahead of his time." Sarah's heart began to beat faster. "Do you think any of his treatments could help Emma?" Marcus met her eyes. "I don't know. Maybe. I've been reading through everything, trying to make sense of his notes. Some of it's brilliant, some of it's too technical for me. But there's something here, Sarah, something that could matter." They talked for hours, Marcus showing her the research, explaining what he understood of it. Sarah felt hope stirring for the first time in months. Real hope, not the desperate kind that kept her awake at night, but the kind that felt like possibility. As the sun began to set and Sarah reluctantly said she needed to get home to Emma, Marcus walked her to her car. "I'll keep digging," he said. "If there's something in here that can help, I'll find it."
"Thank you,"
Sarah said, "for everything." She drove home through the twilight, her mind racing. She didn't know where this would lead, didn't know if Marcus would find anything useful in his grandfather's research. But for the first time since Emma's diagnosis, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward she hadn't seen before, and it had all started because a stranger had refused to walk past a child in the snow. The March thaw came early to Pine Ridge that year, turning snow to slush and revealing all the things winter had buried. Sarah stood at her kitchen window watching water drip from the eaves, creating small rivers in the driveway. Behind her, Emma sat at the table working on math homework, her tongue poking out in concentration the way she always did when she was thinking hard. 3 weeks had passed since the blizzard. 3 weeks since Marcus had carried Emma out of the snow and into their lives. In that time, he'd become a regular presence, showing up every few days with new discoveries from his grandfather's research, staying for dinner, helping Emma with her science projects, fixing the loose step on Sarah's porch without being asked. The town noticed. Of course they noticed. Pine Ridge was too small for secrets, too hungry for scandal. Sarah heard the whispers at the grocery store, saw the sidelong glances at church. Betty Carmichael had actually pulled her aside after services last Sunday to ask, with false sweetness dripping from every word, if Sarah thought it was appropriate to have a strange man around her daughter so much. Sarah had smiled tightly and said Marcus was a friend who was helping with Emma's medical situation. Betty had raised her eyebrows and walked away, probably to spread that juicy tidbit to everyone who'd listen. But Sarah didn't care. Let them talk. Marcus had done more for Emma in 3 weeks than the expensive specialists in Denver had done in 18 months. "Mama, I'm stuck on number 7, Emma called out. Sarah turned from the window. "Let me see." She was helping Emma work through a word problem about trains and distances when she heard the familiar rumble of Marcus's truck. Emma's face lit up. "Is that Marcus? Is he coming for dinner?" "I don't know, baby. Let's finish this problem first." But Emma was already sliding off her chair, running to the door. Sarah followed more slowly, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Through the screen door, she saw Marcus climbing out of his battered Ford, carrying a cardboard box. He looked tired, his face drawn, but there was an energy in his movements that she'd learned to recognize. He'd found something. "Marcus!" Emma burst through the door and launched herself at him. He caught her easily, lifting her up with the box still balanced in one arm.
Hey, kiddo, you're getting too big for this. Pretty soon you'll be carrying me around.
Emma giggled. "That's silly. You're huge." "Huge? I prefer the term impressively sized." He set her down and nodded to Sarah. "Got a minute? I need to show you something." They settled at the kitchen table, Emma returning reluctantly to her homework in the living room after Sarah promised she could join them in 10 minutes. Marcus opened the box and carefully pulled out a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. He handled it like it was made of glass. "This was tucked behind a false panel in my grandfather's study. Took me 3 days to find it. I was measuring the walls, noticed one section was shorter than it should be." He opened the journal to a marked page. "Sarah, I think this is it. I think this is what we've been looking for." Sarah leaned forward, her heart hammering. The page was filled with meticulous handwriting, diagrams, chemical formulas she didn't understand, but the header was clear enough. "Treatment Protocol for Immune Thrombocytopenia. Subject Response Study, 1968 to 1973. He treated ITP patients," Sarah breathed. "Successfully? More than that. He developed an alternative therapy. Look at these notes." Marcus flipped through several pages. He documented 27 patients over 5 years. All of them showed significant improvement. Most went into complete remission. Sarah's hands trembled as she touched the page. "Why didn't this become standard treatment? Why isn't this in hospitals?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Because he tried to publish. Submitted his findings to 3 major medical journals. All of them rejected it. The pharmaceutical companies were already making millions off the standard treatments. They didn't want an alternative, especially not one developed by a small-town doctor working outside the establishment. So he just gave up?" "Not exactly. Look at this." Marcus turned to the final pages of the journal. He kept treating people privately, folks who couldn't afford the mainstream treatments, who'd been told there was nothing more that could be done. He helped them anyway, for free most of the time. Sarah read through the entries, each one documenting a patient's progress. A girl named Charlotte, who'd been bruising so badly she couldn't go to school. A boy named James, who'd needed weekly blood transfusions. A woman named Ruth, who'd been told she'd never be able to have children. All of them improved. All of them lived normal lives. "This is incredible," Sarah whispered. "This could change everything for Emma." "There's more." Marcus pulled out another set of papers, these ones more recent, dated from the early 2000s. "My grandfather kept refining the treatment right up until he died. The last entry is from October 2005, about 6 months before he passed. He'd perfected it, Sarah, made it simpler, more effective." Sarah looked up at him, hope and fear warring in her chest. "Can we use it? Is it safe?" "That's the thing. I've been cross-referencing everything with current medical literature. The compounds he used, they're all natural. Plant-based extracts, mineral supplements, things you can get without a prescription. Nothing toxic, nothing dangerous. The dosages are precise but manageable, and according to his notes, there were 0 adverse reactions. But it's not FDA approved. No doctor would prescribe it." Marcus met her eyes. "No, they wouldn't. You'd be taking a risk." Sarah sat back, her mind racing. The medication Emma was on now cost $800 a month and barely kept her stable. The specialist wanted to try a new treatment that would cost even more, with side effects that terrified Sarah. Steroids that would make Emma gain weight, develop mood swings, possibly damage her bones over time. And there was no guarantee it would work. "I need to think about this," Sarah said quietly. "I need to research it myself, understand what we'd be doing." "Of course, I wouldn't expect anything else." Marcus closed the journal carefully. "I've made copies of everything. Take your time, read it all. Ask me anything."
Emma appeared in the doorway. "Can I come in now? It's been way more than 10 minutes. Sarah smiled despite the weight in her chest. "Come here, baby girl." Emma climbed into her lap, even though she was really too big for it now. Sarah held her close, breathing in the scent of her daughter's shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her heart. She would do anything to keep that heart beating, anything to give Emma a normal life. Over the next week, Sarah became obsessed. She read through every page of Thomas Hendricks's research, cross-referenced his findings with medical journals she accessed through the library's database, stayed up until 2 in the morning making notes and charts. Marcus brought her more materials, explaining the parts she didn't understand, translating medical jargon into plain English. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that Thomas Hendricks had been onto something real. His approach was holistic, treating not just the symptoms but the underlying immune dysfunction. He'd identified specific plant compounds that modulated the immune response, combined them with minerals that supported platelet production, created a protocol that worked with the body instead of against it. And the results spoke for themselves. 27 patients, 27 success stories buried in a forgotten journal because the medical establishment hadn't wanted to listen. Sarah made an appointment with Emma's regular doctor, Dr. Patterson, hoping to discuss the research. But the meeting went poorly from the start. Dr. Patterson, a kind man in his 60s who delivered half the babies in Pine Ridge, listened politely as Sarah explained what she'd found. Then he shook his head. "Sarah, I understand you're frustrated with Emma's progress. Any parent would be. But this," he gestured at the copies she'd brought, "this isn't medicine. This is folk remedy at best, snake oil at worst." But the documented results are not peer-reviewed, not replicated, not verified by any legitimate medical authority. His voice was gentle but firm. "I know you want to help Emma, but experimenting with unproven treatments could make things worse. The protocol we have her on now is working. She's still getting bruises. She's still tired all the time. ITP is a chronic condition. We're managing it, keeping her stable. That's the best we can hope for right now." Sarah left the office feeling defeated but also angry. Keeping her stable. Was that really the best they could hope for? A child who couldn't play too hard, who had to avoid contact sports, who got winded climbing stairs. Emma was 8 years old. She deserved better than stable. That evening, Marcus found Sarah sitting on her porch steps, staring at nothing. He lowered himself down beside her, his shoulder warm against hers. "Doctor didn't go for it," he said. It wasn't a question. "Called it snake oil." They usually do. Anything that challenges the status quo, anything that threatens the profit margin. Sarah turned to look at him. "You sound bitter." "I am bitter. My daughter died because we couldn't afford the experimental treatment that might have saved her. Insurance wouldn't cover it. We mortgaged everything, sold everything, and it still wasn't enough. By the time we scraped together the money, it was too late." His voice was rough, raw. "The system isn't designed to heal people, Sarah. It's designed to make money off sick people." "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "Why would you? I don't talk about it." He was quiet for a moment. "But I'm telling you now because I want you to understand. I'm not pushing this treatment because I'm some conspiracy theorist or because I don't trust doctors. I'm pushing it because I've seen what happens when good medicine gets buried under bureaucracy and greed, and I'll be damned if I watch another little girl suffer when there's an alternative." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. What if it doesn't work? What if I try this and something goes wrong? Then we stop. We go back to what Dr. Patterson prescribed. But Sarah, what if it does work? What if 6 months from now, Emma is running and playing like any other kid? What if this gives her a normal life? Sarah looked across the yard to where Emma was drawing with chalk on the driveway, her movements slow and careful. Even that simple activity tired her out. Sarah made her decision. "Okay," she said, "let's try it." The treatment started small. Marcus prepared the first batch himself, measuring everything with meticulous precision, following his grandfather's instructions to the letter. It was a tincture, amber-colored, slightly sweet-smelling. Emma wrinkled her nose at the taste, but took it without complaint, trusting her mother, trusting Marcus. "How long before we see results?" Sarah asked after the first dose. According to the journal, most patients showed improvement within 2 to 4 weeks, significant improvement by 3 months. Sarah marked the date on her calendar, March 27th. She started keeping a detailed log of Emma's symptoms, her energy levels, the frequency of bruising. She took photos, measured her daughter's activity tolerance. If this worked, she wanted documentation, and if it didn't work, she needed to know exactly when to stop. The first week brought no changes. Emma was the same, tired easily, bruised when she bumped into furniture, needed afternoon naps. Sarah tried not to feel discouraged. Marcus had warned her it would take time. The second week, something shifted. Small things at first. Emma had more energy in the mornings, didn't need her nap one day. The bruise on her shin from bumping the coffee table faded faster than usual. Sarah noted everything in her log, afraid to hope but unable to stop herself. By the third week, the changes were undeniable. Emma played outside for an hour without needing to rest. She actually ran, chasing butterflies in the yard. Sarah stood at the window and cried, watching her daughter move with a freedom she hadn't had in over a year. Marcus came by that evening and found Sarah in the kitchen, her logbook spread out in front of her, checking and rechecking her notes. "It's working," she said, her voice shaking. "Marcus, it's actually working." He looked at the notes, at the photos she'd taken, at the chart showing Emma's improving stamina. A smile spread across his face, transforming it. My grandfather was right. He was right all along. They hugged, the gesture spontaneous and brief, but charged with emotion. When they separated, both of them were wiping their eyes. "We need to be careful," Marcus said. "Don't tell anyone what you're doing. If Dr. Patterson finds out, if the medical board gets involved." "I know. I won't say anything." Sarah closed the logbook. "As far as anyone knows, Emma's just having a good stretch. Kids with ITP have them sometimes." But keeping it secret proved harder than Sarah expected. Emma's improvement was too dramatic to hide. By the 4th week, she was playing on the school playground during recess, something she hadn't been able to do in months. Other parents noticed. Emma's teacher noticed. People started commenting on how much better she looked, how much color was in her cheeks. "Whatever you're doing, it's working," Emma's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, said when Sarah picked her up one day. "I haven't seen her this energetic since the beginning of the school year." Sarah smiled and deflected. "She's just having a good spell. We're grateful for it." But Betty Carmichael wasn't so easy to brush off. She cornered Sarah at the grocery store, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "I heard Emma's doing much better. That's wonderful news." "Thank you, Betty." "What did the doctors say? Did they change her medication?" "We're trying a few different things." "Different things like what? My cousin's daughter has the same condition. Maybe it would help her too." Sarah felt trapped between the produce bins and Betty's aggressive friendliness. "It's complicated. I'd rather not discuss Emma's medical details." Of course. I'm just curious because, well, people are saying that man you've been spending time with, Marcus, they're saying he's some kind of naturalist or something, doing alternative medicine up at that old homestead." Sarah's blood ran cold. "People need to mind their own business." "I'm just concerned, Sarah, for Emma's safety. You don't really know this man, and experimenting with a sick child. Emma is fine, better than fine, and Marcus is a friend who's been incredibly helpful. That's all anyone needs to know." Sarah grabbed her cart and pushed past Betty, her hands shaking. That evening, she told Marcus about the encounter. He listened, his expression darkening. "This is what I was afraid of. Small towns, people talk, and once they start connecting dots, what can they do? I'm Emma's mother. I make the medical decisions. They can report you to Child Protective Services, claim you're neglecting her medical care, using untested treatments on a minor." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "I've seen it happen. Parents who try alternative treatments getting investigated, sometimes losing custody. What happens next will turn this night upside down. reveal a truth nobody expected, and remind us why sometimes the quietest voices carry the most power. Stay tuned to see what happens next. If you're enjoying the story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Sarah felt sick. They could take Emma away from me. It's possible. If someone makes enough noise, if they convince the authorities you're endangering her. But she's getting better. Anyone can see that. We know that. We have the documentation. But without peer-reviewed studies, without FDA approval, it's your word against the medical establishment. Marcus paced the small living room. We need to be smarter about this. Keep the treatment going, but be ready to defend it if necessary. Over the next few days, Sarah became paranoid. She imagined CPS knocking on her door, doctors testifying that she was an unfit mother, Emma being taken away to live with strangers. The fear gnawed at her, made her jumpy and short-tempered. Then, one afternoon in early April, Dr. Patterson's office called. Emma was due for her monthly blood work and checkup. Sarah's first instinct was to cancel, to make excuses, but that would raise more suspicions. She made the appointment, coached Emma to not mention anything about Marcus or the tincture, and showed up at the clinic with her stomach in knots. Dr. Patterson did his usual examination, listened to Emma's heart and lungs, checked her reflexes. Then he looked at her chart and frowned. Her bruising has significantly decreased, he noted, and her energy levels are up according to these notes from her teacher. That's unusual for someone on her current medication protocol. Sarah forced her voice to stay level. She's been having a good month. A very good month. Let's run the blood work and see what's happening internally. The wait for results was torture. Sarah spent 3 days imagining the worst, that the treatment wasn't really working, that the improvement was coincidental, that Emma's platelets were actually dangerously low and she'd been risking her daughter's life. When Dr. Patterson called and asked her to come in without Emma, Sarah knew something was wrong. She left Emma with Marcus and drove to the clinic with her hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. Dr. Patterson met her in his office, Emma's chart open on his desk. His expression was puzzled. Sarah, I've been Emma's doctor since she was diagnosed. I've seen her blood work every month for 18 months, and I have to tell you, I've never seen results like this. Sarah's heart hammered. What do you mean? Her platelet count is normal, not just improved, normal. And her immune markers, the inflammation we've been tracking, it's almost completely resolved. Sarah sat down hard in the chair across from his desk. Normal? Are you sure? I ran the tests twice thinking there was a lab error, but no, these numbers are accurate. Whatever's happening with Emma, it's remarkable. He leaned forward. Sarah, what changed? Did you start a new supplement? Change her diet significantly? Sarah's mind raced. She could lie, could claim she didn't know, but looking at Dr. Patterson's kind, curious face, she found herself telling the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I've been giving her a natural supplement, plant-based compounds, minerals. It was developed by Thomas Hendricks. Dr. Patterson's eyebrows shot up. Thomas Hendricks, the old hermit who lived up on the mountain. He wasn't a hermit. He was a doctor. He did extensive research on ITP and developed an alternative treatment protocol. Sarah, Dr. Patterson's voice took on a warning tone. Please tell me you're not experimenting with folk medicine. It's not folk medicine. It's legitimate research, carefully documented over decades, and clearly it's working. Sarah heard the defiance in her own voice. Look at those numbers. Look at Emma. She's thriving for the first time since her diagnosis. Dr. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I need to see this research. Everything you have. Sarah hesitated. Why? Because if this is real, if it's reproducible, it could help a lot of people. But I need to verify it, make sure it's safe, understand the mechanism of action. He met her eyes. I'm not trying to shut you down, Sarah. I'm trying to help. Sarah made a decision. I'll bring you copies, but Dr. Patterson, I need you to keep this quiet. I can't have people. There's already talk in town. I can't risk losing Emma over this. You won't lose Emma. These results speak for themselves, but we need to be careful. Document everything. Make sure we can defend the treatment if questions arise. He smiled slightly. Besides, I've been a doctor for 35 years. I've learned that sometimes the best medicine comes from unexpected places. That evening, Sarah and Marcus sat in his grandfather's study, the room illuminated by oil lamps and the glow of the fireplace. They were preparing a complete copy of Thomas Hendrix's research for Dr. Patterson. Journals, patient records, formulation notes, everything. "Do you trust him?" Marcus asked as he carefully photographed pages from the original journal. "I think so. He seems genuinely interested in helping Emma, not in protecting the system." "Let's hope you're right." Marcus set down the camera. "Sarah, there's something else I need to show you. I've been waiting for the right time." He led her to the far corner of the study, where a large wooden trunk sat against the wall. He opened it to reveal dozens more journals, files, boxes of dried plant samples sealed in glass jars. "My grandfather treated hundreds of people over the years. ITP was just one condition he focused on. There's research here on rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, conditions the medical establishment struggles with." Sarah knelt beside the trunk, overwhelmed. "This is incredible. This could change lives." "It could, but it's also dangerous. Pharmaceutical companies, medical boards, they don't like competition. If we start making noise about this, if we try to share it widely, there will be pushback." "So what do we do?" Marcus looked at her, his pale blue eyes intense in the lamplight. "We help the people we can, quietly. Word of mouth. People who are desperate, who've exhausted other options. We give them hope. Like you gave Emma. Like my grandfather gave to everyone who came to him." Marcus closed the trunk carefully. He knew he couldn't change the whole system, but he could change individual lives, one person at a time. Sarah understood. This wasn't about revolution. It was about compassion, about seeing suffering and having the knowledge and courage to relieve it. Over the next month, Emma continued to improve. By mid-May, her blood work remained consistently normal. Dr. Patterson, after thoroughly reviewing Thomas Hendrix's research, admitted that while he couldn't explain exactly why it worked, the results were undeniable. He started quietly recommending the treatment to other patients with autoimmune conditions, always with the caveat that it was experimental, always with close monitoring. Word spread slowly, carefully. A woman with rheumatoid arthritis who hadn't been able to open a jar in 3 years regained the use of her hands. A teenage boy with chronic fatigue syndrome went from spending 20 hours a day in bed to playing on the soccer team. A veteran with fibromyalgia finally slept through the night without pain. Marcus and Sarah became partners in a quiet revolution. She handled the people side, talking to patients, explaining the treatments, offering support. He handled the technical side, preparing formulations, teaching people how to follow the protocols, maintaining his grandfather's meticulous standards. They worked well together, their strengths complementing each other. And somewhere along the way, the partnership became something more. It happened gradually, imperceptibly, a hand lingering on a shoulder. Conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. The way Marcus looked at Emma like she was his own daughter. The way Sarah caught herself thinking about him at odd moments throughout the day. Neither of them acknowledged it. They were both too scarred, too cautious. But it was there, growing like the plants in Thomas Hendrix's greenhouse, quiet and persistent. One evening in late May, after Emma had gone to bed, Sarah and Marcus sat on her porch watching the stars emerge. The air was warm, carrying the scent of honeysuckle and pine. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, "about making my grandfather's research public, really public, publishing it online, sending it to medical journals, making it available to anyone who needs it." Sarah turned to look at him. "That's a big step. Are you ready for the consequences?" "I don't know. But I keep thinking about all the people out there suffering like Emma was, like my Lily was, people who could be helped if they just knew this option existed." He was quiet for a moment. "My grandfather kept it hidden because he was afraid. Afraid of the establishment, afraid of being shut down. But fear shouldn't stop good medicine from reaching people who need it. You're right, it shouldn't. Sarah reached over and took his hand. The gesture felt natural, right. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. We'll do it together. Marcus squeezed her hand. Together. I like the sound of that. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the night deepen. Sarah thought about how much had changed since that blizzard in February. She'd been drowning then, barely keeping her head above water, watching her daughter fade and feeling powerless to stop it. Now Emma was healthy, running and playing and living the childhood she deserved. Now Sarah had a partner, someone who understood her fears and shared her hopes. Now she had Marcus. "Can I tell you something?" Sarah said quietly. "Anything." "I was so angry when David died. Angry at him for leaving, angry at God, angry at the world. I thought I'd never stop being angry. And now? Now I think maybe things happen the way they're supposed to. If David hadn't died, I wouldn't have been struggling so hard. I wouldn't have been desperate enough to buy that garage for $7,500. I wouldn't have been open to trying something as crazy as giving Emma an experimental treatment based on 50-year-old research." She smiled. "I wouldn't have met you." Marcus turned to face her fully. "Sarah, I know it's complicated. I know we're both still carrying grief. But I need you to know that you saved more than Emma's life that night in the blizzard. You saved mine too." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Marcus leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, a question more than a statement. Sarah answered by kissing him back, her free hand coming up to touch his bearded cheek. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "That was," Marcus began. "Long overdue," Sarah finished. They laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet yard. From inside the house, they heard Emma's voice calling out, "Mama, I had a bad dream." Sarah stood, still holding Marcus's hand. "Come on, let's go check on her together." They walked inside hand in hand, and for the first time since David died, Sarah felt like her family was whole again. Not the same as before, nothing could ever be that, but whole in a new way. Different, but complete. Emma was sitting up in bed rubbing her eyes. When she saw Marcus and Sarah together, she smiled. "Did you guys finally kiss?" Sarah blinked. "What? How did you—" "I'm 8, not stupid. I see how you look at each other." Emma patted the bed. "Can Marcus read me a story? He does better voices than you, Mama. No offense." Sarah laughed. "None taken. Marcus, you're on story duty." Marcus settled on the edge of Emma's bed and picked up the book from her nightstand. As he read, doing elaborate voices for all the characters, Sarah leaned against the doorframe and watched. This strange, wonderful man who'd appeared out of a blizzard and turned their lives upside down. This guardian angel in flannel and work boots. Later, after Emma had drifted back to sleep and Marcus had gone home to the Hendricks place, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with her journal. She'd started keeping one recently, documenting not just Emma's medical progress, but her own emotional journey. She wrote, "May 27th, Emma's platelet count remains normal. Dr. Patterson is amazed. But more than that, Emma is happy. She played for 3 hours today without getting tired. She's making plans for summer, wants to join the swimming team at the community center. Things I didn't think would ever be possible." And Marcus. "I don't know what to call what's happening between us. It's too early for love, but too deep for just friendship. Maybe it doesn't need a label. Maybe it just needs to be allowed to grow. I think about David sometimes and wonder what he'd think. I like to believe he'd be happy for us. He'd want Emma to be healthy, to have a father figure. He'd want me to not spend the rest of my life alone." Thomas Hendricks's research saved Emma's life, but Marcus's courage in sharing it, in risking everything to help a stranger, that's what really changed everything. He could have kept walking that night in the blizzard. He could have ignored a sick child in the snow, but he didn't. He stopped. He helped. And in doing so, he gave us a future I'd stopped believing in. Tomorrow we're meeting with Dr. Patterson to discuss expanding the treatment program. Marcus wants to set up a proper clinic at the Hendricks place, something official and documented. I'm nervous about it.
nervous about the attention it might bring, the questions it will raise. But I'm also excited. Excited about the possibility of helping more people, of seeing more families experience the joy we've found. Emma asked me today if Marcus is going to be her new daddy. I told her it was too soon for that kind of talk. But in my heart, I wonder. I hope. Because when I imagine the future now, I see all three of us in it, together. Sarah closed the journal and turned off the lights. As she climbed into bed, she thought about the strange path that had led her here, the grief and struggle, the desperate choices, the unexpected miracles. Life was messy and painful and beautiful, often all at once. But tonight, lying in the darkness with her daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall and the memory of Marcus's kiss still warm on her lips, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated hope for whatever came next. The June sun climbed high over Pine Ridge, turning the mountain peaks gold and filling the valleys with warmth that seemed to seep into everything. Sarah stood at the base of the old logging road that led up to the Hendricks homestead, Emma bouncing excitedly beside her. Marcus had called that morning, his voice tight with an urgency she'd never heard before. "I need you to come up here, both of you. I found something." Now, as they made the climb in Sarah's Honda, navigating the rutted path that had become familiar over the past months, she felt her pulse quicken. Marcus didn't get excited easily. Whatever he'd discovered had to be significant. The homestead came into view, looking different than it had in February. Marcus had been working on it, replacing broken windows, clearing brush, painting the trim. It looked less like an abandoned relic and more like a home. Sarah's chest tightened at the thought. She'd been spending more time here, helping Marcus organize his grandfather's research, staying for dinners that stretched into evenings. Emma had declared Marcus's couch the most comfortable place in the world for reading books. They were becoming a family. Neither of them had said it out loud, but it was happening anyway. Marcus met them at the door, his eyes bright with something Sarah couldn't quite name. Excitement, yes, but also nervousness, maybe even fear. "Thanks for coming so quickly," he said, ushering them inside. "Emma, there's fresh lemonade in the kitchen and those cookies you like. Why don't you grab a snack while I talk to your mom?" Emma, always perceptive, looked between them. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, baby," Sarah assured her. "Go ahead, we'll be right there." Once Emma had disappeared into the kitchen, Marcus took Sarah's hand and led her to the study. The room was a controlled chaos of papers and journals, just as it had been for months. But in the center of the floor, the old wooden planks had been pulled up, revealing a dark space beneath. "Marcus, what is this?" "I was moving that bookshelf, trying to make room for more storage. The floor felt hollow underneath, so I pulled up the boards." He grabbed a flashlight. "Sarah, there's a whole room down there, a sealed chamber my grandfather built." Sarah's breath caught. "Show me." Marcus lowered himself through the opening, then reached up to help Sarah down. The space was about 10 feet by 12 feet, lined with what looked like stone. The air was cool and dry, perfectly preserved. And along every wall were shelves, dozens of them, filled with glass jars, bottles, sealed containers. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed. "He stored everything here. Preserved samples of every plant he used, dried and labeled with dates going back to 1957. Tinctures he'd already prepared, sealed in amber glass to protect them from light." Marcus moved his flashlight across the shelves. But that's not even the most important part. He directed the beam to a metal file cabinet in the corner. In there, I found complete formulations for 17 different conditions. Not just notes and theories, but finished protocols ready to use. Each one documented with patient outcomes, dosage instructions, preparation methods. Sarah moved closer, running her fingers along the cabinet's edge. 17 conditions. "Marcus, do you know what this means?" "I know exactly what it means. It means my grandfather spent his entire life building a comprehensive alternative medical system. He wasn't just treating ITP, he was trying to create a whole new approach to chronic illness." Sarah opened the top drawer. Inside were manila folders,
each one labeled with meticulous handwriting. Chronic fatigue syndrome, lupus, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, conditions that conventional medicine struggled with that left patients suffering despite years of treatment. "This is bigger than we thought," Sarah said quietly. "This isn't just about helping a few people in Pine Ridge. This could help thousands, maybe millions." Marcus nodded. "That's why I called you. Sarah, we need to decide what to do with this. Do we keep it quiet, continue helping people one at a time, or do we go public, really public? Share everything online, send it to research institutions, make it available to anyone who needs it." Sarah thought about Emma, healthy and vibrant for the first time in years. She thought about the handful of people in Pine Ridge they'd already helped, watching them reclaim their lives. Then she thought about all the parents out there like she'd been, desperate and terrified, watching their children suffer. "We go public," she said firmly. "We can't keep this hidden. It's not right. There will be consequences. The medical establishment won't like it. Pharmaceutical companies definitely won't like it. We could face lawsuits, investigations, harassment." "I don't care. This is too important." Sarah met his eyes. "Your grandfather hid this because he was afraid, but he's gone now, and we're not him. We can be braver." Marcus pulled her close, pressing his forehead against hers. "Okay. Then we do it together. All of it." They climbed back up to the main floor and called Emma in. She appeared with cookie crumbs on her shirt and a milk mustache, looking so wonderfully normal and healthy that Sarah's eyes stung. "Emma, we need to talk to you about something important," Sarah said, sitting on the couch and pulling her daughter beside her. Marcus sat on Emma's other side. "Is this about you two getting married?" Emma asked matter-of-factly. Sarah choked. "What? No, that's not. We're not. Because I think you should. Marcus is really nice and he makes you laugh and he's good at fixing things and reading stories. Plus, he already basically lives here half the time." Marcus coughed to hide a laugh. Sarah felt her face burning. "We'll discuss that later. Right now, we need to talk about the medicine that made you better." Emma's expression turned serious. "Okay." "Marcus found all the research his grandfather did, treatments for lots of different sicknesses, and we're thinking about sharing it with the world, putting it online so other kids like you can get better too." "That sounds good. Why wouldn't you do that?" "Because some people might not like it. Some people might say we're wrong to share medicine that doctors haven't approved yet. They might try to stop us." Emma considered this, "But I got better. Everybody can see that. The medicine works." "You're right, it does, but sometimes the truth isn't enough to change people's minds." Emma looked between Sarah and Marcus. "Are you scared?" Marcus answered honestly. "A little bit, yeah. Me too sometimes. Like when I first got sick, and I didn't know if I'd ever feel good again. But you helped me, Marcus. You and Mama. You were brave for me." She took both their hands. "Now you have to be brave for other kids." Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. When had her daughter gotten so wise? That evening, after Emma had gone to bed in Marcus's guest room, they'd started staying over on weekends. Sarah and Marcus sat at the kitchen table with laptops and notebooks spread between them. They were building a website, writing out Thomas Hendrix's protocols in clear, accessible language, preparing to upload decades of research to the internet. "We should include video testimonials," Sarah said. "From Emma, from the other people we've helped. Let them tell their own stories." "Good idea. Makes it harder to dismiss as theoretical when people can see real results." Marcus typed notes. "We'll need a disclaimer. Something saying people should consult with their doctors, that this isn't meant to replace conventional treatment. Even though sometimes it should replace conventional treatment. Even though we have to protect ourselves legally." They worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and determination. Around midnight, Marcus leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. "Sarah, are you sure about this? Once we hit publish, there's no taking it back." "I've never been more sure of anything." "Not even when you married David?" The question surprised her. They didn't talk about David much, both of them carefully navigating around the ghost of Sarah's late husband. "David was a good man," Sarah said slowly. "I loved him, and I'm grateful for the time we had. But that was a different kind of certainty. Young love, you know? We were kids who thought we had forever. And now? Now I know forever isn't guaranteed. Now I know that every day matters, every choice matters. And this choice, sharing your grandfather's work, it feels like the most important thing I've ever done besides raising Emma. She reached across the table and took his hand. I'm not scared of the consequences because I'm not doing this alone. I have you. Marcus stood and pulled her up, wrapping his arms around her. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other in the quiet kitchen. I love you, Marcus said. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out, but I need you to know that. Sarah pulled back to look at him. I love you too. And Emma's right. You do basically live here half the time. Maybe we should make it official. Are you proposing to me, Sarah Mitchell? Maybe I am. She smiled. We can be a real family. You, me, Emma. We can face whatever comes next together. Marcus kissed her, deep and thorough, a promise and a celebration all at once. When they finally separated, both of them were grinning. Is that a yes? Sarah asked. That's a hell yes. They finished the website at 3 a.m. Sarah's finger hovered over the publish button, her heart racing. This was it, the moment that would change everything. Ready? Marcus asked. Ready. She clicked. The Hendricks protocol went live at 3:17 a.m. on June 19th. Within hours, it had been shared across social media platforms. Within days, it had been downloaded thousands of times. Within a week, Sarah and Marcus were fielding emails from people all over the country, all over the world, desperate for help. Some of the messages broke Sarah's heart. Parents with sick children, people who'd been suffering for years, individuals who'd given up hope and suddenly had it rekindled. She answered every single email personally, providing guidance, offering support, connecting people with resources, but the backlash came too. Medical boards issued statements warning against unproven treatments. Pharmaceutical companies' lawyers sent cease and desist letters. Local news picked up the story, and not all the coverage was friendly. One particularly vicious article called them snake oil salesmen preying on desperate people. Dr. Patterson called Sarah into his office. She went prepared for a fight, but found him thoughtful instead. I've been getting calls from colleagues, he said. They want to know if I'm endorsing what you're doing. And what are you telling them? That I've seen the results firsthand. That Emma's blood work doesn't lie. That while I have concerns about people self-treating without medical supervision, I also recognize that our current system fails a lot of patients. He leaned forward. I'm on your side, Sarah. But you need to be prepared. This is going to get bigger and messier before it gets better. He was right. By the end of June, a pharmaceutical company had filed a lawsuit claiming the Hendricks protocol violated their patents. The state medical board opened an investigation into whether Marcus was practicing medicine without a license. And someone, Sarah suspected Betty Carmichael, had reported her to Child Protective Services. The CPS visit was terrifying. A social worker named Janet Reeves showed up unannounced, clipboard in hand, asking to see Emma. Sarah's hands shook as she called her daughter down from her room. But Emma, beautiful, fearless Emma, charmed Janet completely. She showed her artwork, talked about school, demonstrated her ability to do 10 jumping jacks without getting winded, something she couldn't have done 4 months ago. She answered questions honestly, saying yes, her mother gave her special medicine, and no, she'd never felt unsafe or scared. Janet pulled Sarah aside. Mrs. Mitchell, I've reviewed Emma's medical records with Dr. Patterson's permission. The improvement in her condition is remarkable. So, you're closing the case? I'm recommending no further action. Whatever you're doing, it's clearly working. Just keep documenting everything and maintain regular contact with Emma's doctor. She smiled. And for what it's worth, my mother has rheumatoid arthritis. I sent her the link to your website. After Janet left, Sarah collapsed on the couch and cried with relief. Marcus held her, stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances. We're going to be okay, he said. All of us. We're going to get through this. and Sarah believed him. Because they'd already survived the worst. They'd faced death and grief and impossible choices. This was just noise. The important thing was that Emma was healthy, that people were being helped, that Thomas Hendricks's legacy was finally reaching the people who needed it. The important thing was that they were facing it together, as a family. The summer heat settled over Pine Ridge like a blessing, turning the mountain meadows gold and filling the air with the scent of wildflowers and pine. Sarah stood in the doorway of what had once been Thomas Hendricks's study and was now the headquarters of the Hendricks Foundation, watching Marcus teach a small group of people how to prepare one of his grandfather's formulations. His hands moved with confidence, measuring dried herbs with precision, explaining the process in terms anyone could understand. It had been 3 months since they'd gone public with the research. 3 months of chaos and triumph, of attacks and vindication, of watching something beautiful grow from the ashes of fear and secrecy. The lawsuit from the pharmaceutical company had been quietly dropped after their lawyers realized they couldn't actually prove patent infringement on compounds derived from plants that had existed for millennia. The medical board investigation had stalled when Dr. Patterson and 5 other physicians submitted formal statements supporting the Hendricks protocol's efficacy. And the stories kept coming, hundreds of them now. A woman in Oregon whose lupus symptoms had disappeared after 6 weeks on the protocol. A man in Florida who'd been bedridden with chronic fatigue syndrome for 8 years and was now training for a marathon. A child in Maine with severe eczema whose skin had cleared completely. Each story was documented, photographed, verified by medical professionals willing to look past their training and see the results. Emma appeared at Sarah's elbow, tugging on her sleeve. She was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, her legs showing scrapes from climbing trees and playing soccer. Beautiful, normal childhood injuries that would have terrified Sarah a year ago. Now they were just proof of a life fully lived. "Mama, can Zoe come over for a sleepover on Friday? We want to build a fort and watch movies." Sarah smiled. "Sure, baby, but you'll have to clean your room first." "Deal!" Emma bounded off, full of energy that never seemed to deplete anymore. Marcus finished his demonstration and walked over, wiping his hands on a towel. His beard was neatly trimmed now, his hair shorter. He looked younger somehow, lighter, like sharing his grandfather's work had lifted a weight he'd been carrying for years. "That's the last group for today," he said. "How are the emails looking?" Sarah glanced at her laptop. 243 new ones since this morning. Most are asking for specific protocols. Some are sharing success stories. A few are from doctors wanting to collaborate. Doctors wanting to collaborate? Never thought I'd see that. Times are changing. People are tired of the old way of doing things. Sarah closed the laptop. "Marcus, we need to talk about scaling up. We can't keep doing this from your grandfather's house. We need a real facility, staff, proper equipment." "I know. I've been thinking about it too." He led her outside to the porch where they could see the valley spread below them, Pine Ridge nestled in the green folds of the mountains. "There's that old community center on Maple Street. Been vacant for 2 years since the town lost funding. Big enough for a clinic, classroom space, storage for supplies." "How much would it cost to buy and renovate?" "More than we have. But I've been getting donation offers. People we've helped, people who believe in what we're doing. If we set up properly as a non-profit, I think we could raise the money." Sarah leaned against the porch railing, thinking. A real clinic. A place where people could come for help, where they could train others in Thomas Hendricks's methods, where the work could continue long after they were gone. It felt right. It felt like the natural next step. "Let's do it," she said. "Let's build something that lasts." That evening, Sarah drove home to her rental house to pick up some clothes. She'd been staying at the homestead more than her own place lately, and it was starting to feel silly to maintain 2 residences. Emma had already asked 3 times when they were moving in with Marcus officially. Soon, Sarah thought. Very soon. She was packing a bag when she heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, she saw Sheriff Daniels climbing out of his patrol car, his expression serious. Sarah's stomach clenched. Had something happened? Was someone filing another complaint? She met him at the door. "Sheriff, what can I do for you?" "Sarah? Mind if I come in for a minute?" She led him to the living room, her mind racing through possibilities. But Daniels surprised her by smiling as he sat down. "I'm not here on official business." "Well, not exactly. I wanted to talk to you about the Hendricks Foundation." "What about it?" "My wife, Linda. She's had fibromyalgia for 12 years. Can't work. Can barely get out of bed some days. Doctors have tried everything. Pain management, antidepressants, physical therapy. Nothing helps much." He looked down at his hands. "I saw what happened with Emma. I've been watching people in town get better. And I was wondering if you thought it might help Linda." Sarah felt her heart expand. Sheriff Daniels had been one of the most skeptical people in Pine Ridge, one of the first to question Marcus's presence, to doubt what they were doing. And now here he was, asking for help. "Of course. Have her come up to the homestead tomorrow. We'll go over her medical history, start her on a protocol tailored to her symptoms." Relief washed over Daniels's face. "Thank you. Really. I know I wasn't always supportive of what you and Marcus were doing. I thought a lot of things that turned out to be wrong." "You were protecting your town. I understand that. Still, I should have trusted you. You've never been anything but good for this community." He stood to leave, then paused. "There's something else. The town council is meeting next week to discuss the old community center. Word is, you're interested in it." "We are, planning to turn it into a proper clinic and education center." "Well, you should know that Betty Carmichael is planning to oppose it. She's got a whole presentation about how you're running a cult or something equally ridiculous. She's rallying people against you." Sarah sighed. "Of course she is. But here's the thing. For every person Betty convinces, there are 3 more who've been helped by what you're doing. 3 more who are grateful. I'll be at that meeting and I'll be speaking in your favor, and I'm not the only one." He smiled. "You've got more support than you think, Sarah." After he left, Sarah called Marcus and told him about the conversation. They talked strategy, preparing for the town council meeting, making plans to present their vision properly. But underneath the practical discussion, Sarah felt something else. Pride. Gratitude. A sense that they were building something real, something that mattered. The town council meeting was held on a sweltering Tuesday evening in late August. The high school gymnasium was packed, every seat filled, and people standing along the walls. Sarah sat in the front row with Marcus on one side and Emma on the other. Dr. Patterson was there, along with Sheriff Daniels and his wife Linda, and there, scattered through the crowd, were dozens of faces Sarah recognized, people they'd helped, people whose lives had been changed. Betty Carmichael spoke first, her voice dripping with false concern. She talked about unregulated medicine and the dangers of trusting unproven treatments. She showed charts and statistics about medical fraud. She painted Marcus as a con artist and Sarah as a desperate woman who'd fallen for his schemes. "We cannot allow our town to become a haven for quackery," Betty concluded. "We cannot risk our children's safety by endorsing these dangerous practices. I urge the council to deny this application and shut down the so-called Hendricks Foundation immediately." There was scattered applause, mostly from Betty's friends and the handful of people who always opposed anything new. Then it was Sarah's turn. She stood, her legs shaking slightly, and walked to the podium. She'd prepared a speech, had note cards in her pocket. But looking out at the crowd, at all those faces, she decided to speak from the heart instead. "My name is Sarah Mitchell, and a year ago I was drowning. My daughter Emma had a rare blood disorder that was slowly killing her. The medications cost more than I could afford, and they barely worked anyway. I was out of options, out of hope, out of everything except love for my child." Her voice cracked. Then a stranger appeared during a blizzard and saved Emma's life. Not just that night, but every day since. Marcus introduced me to his grandfather's research, and that research gave me back my daughter. She gestured to Emma, who stood up so everyone could see her. Healthy, vibrant, glowing with life. "Emma's not the only one. Sheriff Daniels' wife, Linda, she's here tonight.
Linda, can you stand? Linda Daniels stood, smiling. 6 weeks ago, I could barely walk. Today, I'm pain-free for the first time in over a decade. Jack Morrison, Sarah continued. You're here too, right? An elderly man in the back raised his hand. Rheumatoid arthritis. Crippled my hands so bad I couldn't hold a coffee cup. Now I'm building furniture in my workshop again. One by one, people stood. 15 of them, then 20, then 30. Each one sharing their story in a few sentences. Each one a testament to the power of Thomas Hendricks's work. When the last person sat down, Sarah looked directly at the town council members. Betty calls this quackery. I call it medicine that works. She says we're dangerous. I say the dangerous thing is denying people access to treatments that could save their lives just because those treatments don't fit into the conventional system. She pulled out a folder and set it on the podium. This contains testimonials from 47 people we've helped in the last 3 months. It contains letters of support from 8 licensed physicians, including Dr. Patterson. It contains our plans for the community center, including safety protocols, oversight procedures, and educational programming. She paused. What it doesn't contain is any evidence of harm, because we haven't harmed anyone. We've only helped. Marcus stood and joined her at the podium. My grandfather spent 50 years developing these treatments. He was a brilliant physician who saw suffering and dedicated his life to relieving it. He hid his work because he was afraid of exactly this kind of opposition, afraid that politics and profit would matter more than helping people. His voice was steady, strong. But Sarah and we're not afraid. We believe in transparency, in collaboration, in making this knowledge available to anyone who needs it. Give us the community center and we'll build something this town can be proud of. A place of healing and hope. A legacy that honors my grandfather's vision and helps people for generations to come. The council members looked at each other. Then Mayor Helen Pritchard, a practical woman in her 60s, leaned forward. I have a question. What happens if someone has a bad reaction to one of these treatments? Who's liable? We require everyone to sign informed consent forms, Sarah answered. We recommend they work with their regular physicians. We document everything and monitor progress closely. And we carry liability insurance through a company that specializes in alternative medicine practices. And you're planning to operate as a non-profit? Yes. All donations go directly to operating costs and helping people who can't afford conventional treatment. Neither Marcus nor I take a salary. What about medical credentials? Who will be administering these treatments? We'll have licensed naturopathic doctors on staff. We're in talks with several who are interested in joining us. Everything will be legal and above board. The mayor nodded slowly. I'd like to hear from Dr. Patterson. Dr. Patterson stood. I've been practicing medicine in Pine Ridge for 35 years. I've seen a lot of trends come and go, a lot of miracle cures that turned out to be nothing. But I've also seen Emma Mitchell's blood work. I've seen Linda Daniels walk without pain. I've reviewed Thomas Hendricks's research, and while I can't explain exactly why it works, I can confirm that it does work. He looked around the room. Medicine is supposed to be about helping people, not protecting profits or egos. If something helps people and doesn't harm them, we should embrace it, not fight it. The council deliberated for 20 minutes while the crowd waited in tense silence. Emma squeezed Sarah's hand. Marcus stood close enough that Sarah could feel his warmth, his steady presence. Finally, Mayor Pritchard spoke. The Pine Ridge Town Council votes 4-1 in favor of leasing the community center to the Hendricks Foundation for $1 per year, with a 5-year renewable term. Renovations to begin immediately, pending building permits and safety inspections. The gymnasium erupted in applause. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as Marcus pulled her into a hug. Emma jumped up and down, cheering. People swarmed them, offering congratulations, thanking them, sharing their excitement. Betty Carmichael left without a word, her face tight with disapproval. But Sarah barely noticed. She was too busy being grateful, too busy imagining the future they were about to build. The renovation of the community center took 4 months and the help of what felt like half the town.
Contractors donated labor. Suppliers offered materials at cost. People showed up on weekends to paint walls, install shelving, landscape the grounds. It became a community project, something Pine Ridge could rally around. Marcus designed the space with careful attention to his grandfather's principles. There was a large classroom for teaching preparation methods and protocol education, private consultation rooms where people could discuss their health concerns, a laboratory for preparing formulations under controlled conditions, a library housing copies of all Thomas Hendrix's research, and in the lobby, a portrait of Thomas himself, painted from an old photograph, watching over the work he'd started so many years ago. The Hendrix Center for Integrative Medicine opened its doors on December 15th. Over 200 people attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. News crews came from Denver and Colorado Springs. Medical journals that had once dismissed the work now sent reporters to document it. Sarah stood at the entrance, watching the crowd flow in, and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. In less than a year, her life had completely transformed. Her daughter was healthy. She'd found love again. She was part of something meaningful, something that was changing lives every single day. Marcus appeared at her side, sliding his arm around her waist. "You okay?" "Better than okay. This is incredible. We did this, you and me. And about 100 other people." Sarah laughed. "I keep thinking about that night in February. If you'd walked past Emma in the snow, if you'd kept going, none of this would exist." "I don't believe that. I think it was meant to happen. All of it." He kissed her temple. "Speaking of meant to happen, I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Sarah's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "I know we already decided we're getting married, but I wanted to do this properly. Sarah Mitchell, you're the strongest, bravest, most compassionate person I've ever met. You saved me as much as I saved Emma. Will you marry me? Make it official?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak through the tears. Marcus slipped the ring on her finger, and she pulled him into a kiss that felt like a promise, like a beginning, like everything good that was yet to come. "Is this a bad time?" Dr. Patterson's voice made them break apart, both of them laughing. He smiled. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here who wants to meet you." He stepped aside to reveal a woman in her 40s, well-dressed, professional-looking. She held out her hand to Sarah. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Jennifer Reeves. I'm a researcher at the National Institutes of Health. I've been following your work with great interest." Sarah shook her hand, confused. "The NIH, really? We'd like to propose a collaboration, proper clinical trials of the Hendrix protocols, conducted under rigorous scientific conditions. If the results are as promising as your anecdotal evidence suggests, we could be looking at a revolution in how we treat chronic autoimmune conditions." Marcus stepped forward. "You want to study my grandfather's work, officially?" "We do. With your permission and participation, of course. This would be a partnership. Your expertise combined with our resources and credentials." Dr. Reeves smiled. "The goal would be to validate the treatments scientifically and eventually get them approved for mainstream use." Sarah and Marcus looked at each other. This was what they'd hoped for, what they'd worked toward. Validation, recognition, a path to helping even more people. "Yes," Sarah said, "absolutely yes." Over the next year, the Hendrix Center became a model for integrative medicine. The NIH trials began, with researchers documenting everything with scientific precision. News of the success spread, bringing people from across the country to Pine Ridge. The town's economy boomed as hotels filled, restaurants thrived, and new businesses opened to serve the influx of visitors. Sarah and Marcus were married in June, a simple ceremony in the meadow behind the homestead, with Emma as the flower girl and half the town in attendance. They bought the Hendrix property outright and turned it into their family home, preserving Thomas's laboratory as a historical site. Emma thrived. She joined the soccer team, made honor roll, grew tall and strong and fearless. Sometimes Sarah would watch her daughter run across a field and remember the pale, exhausted child she'd been. The transformation still took her breath away. The pharmaceutical company that had tried to sue them eventually reached out with a different offer. partnership. They wanted to license some of the Hendrix formulations, produce them commercially, make them available in pharmacies nationwide. Marcus negotiated carefully, ensuring that affordable versions would always be available through the foundation, that profits would fund further research. By the time Emma turned 10, the Hendrix Foundation had helped over 3,000 people. The NIH trials had validated 5 different protocols, with papers published in prestigious medical journals. Medical schools were adding integrative medicine to their curricula, and Thomas Hendrix, the reclusive mountain doctor who'd died alone and forgotten, was being recognized as a visionary. One evening in late autumn, Sarah sat on the porch of the homestead with Marcus and Emma, watching the sun set over the mountains. The air was crisp, carrying the promise of winter. A year from now, they'd be planning for a second clinic, this one in Denver. But for now, Sarah was content to sit in this moment, grateful beyond words. "Mama," Emma said, leaning against her shoulder, "do you think Marcus's grandfather knows about everything we've done?" Sarah looked at Marcus, who smiled. "I think he knows," Sarah said softly. "I think he's been watching the whole time, proud of what we've built. I hope so, because he saved my life even though he died before I was born. That's pretty cool." "It is pretty cool." Sarah kissed the top of Emma's head. "You know what else is cool? You saved lives too. By being brave enough to try something new, by being proof that the treatment works, you helped all those other people." Emma thought about this. So we all saved each other. You, me, Marcus, his grandfather. Like a chain. Exactly like a chain. One person helping another, passing it forward. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness gathered. Inside the house, the lights glowed warm and welcoming. In the valley below, Pine Ridge settled in for the night, a small town with a big heart and a legacy of healing that would ripple outward for generations. Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them here, the grief and struggle, the desperate choices and unexpected miracles. The stranger who'd appeared in a blizzard and refused to walk past a child in need. The love that had grown between broken people learning to be whole again. She'd thought she was buying a simple solution that February night when Marcus carried Emma out of the snow. But what she'd really found was everything. Purpose and partnership, healing and hope, a family stitched together by compassion and courage. Anyone can change the world if they're brave enough to stand up when others sit down, speak up when others stay silent, and reach out when others walk past. As the stars emerged one by one above the Colorado mountains, Sarah Mitchell knew one thing with absolute certainty. The greatest treasures in life aren't found in the obvious places. They're hidden beneath floorboards, waiting for someone with the courage to look. They're carried in the arms of strangers who refuse to leave children in the snow. They're built one small act of kindness at a time until those acts accumulate into something miraculous. And sometimes, just sometimes, saving one life opens a door to saving thousands. Because for Sarah, for Marcus, for Emma, and for everyone whose life they touched, the story that began with laughter in a blizzard became a legacy of healing that would echo long after the snow had melted and the mountains had worn smooth. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories are waiting for you. Click to keep discovering with us, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe kindness can change the world.